Good evening and welcome to the September 14th meeting of the Civil Service Commission. May we have roll call, please?
Commissioner Yakubian? Here. Commissioner Manukian?
Here.
Commissioner Abkarian?
Here.
Chair Devine?
Here.
For the record, Commissioner Gazarian is absent.
Okay, before we go to the first item, I want to mention we're going to pull two items. The first one will be item number 10, reorganization of the commission. One of our commissioners is not with us tonight, and he asked to have this item postponed, so this will be postponed to a future meeting. And then we have a report on the number 9, item 9, the report on the past two employee performance evaluations. Again, I believe we should have all 5 commissioners here in order to evaluate that report, so we're going to pull that one, item number 9. Well, I'm assuming my colleagues concur with that? No objections? Okay. The next item?
Minutes for the meeting of July 27, 2016.
Move to approve, dispense from reading.
Second.
Without objection, they're approved. Next item?
Oral communications.
I have no cards. Is there anyone wishing to address the commission on items not on the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next item.
Recruitment and examination report.
Mr. Doyle.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, this item is a note and file. It's a report on our recruitment and exam workload. You've seen this report many, many times. It has the recruitments, all the activity that's currently going on, listed by staff, by filing deadlines, the dates of exams, and all that information. It is. You could see it's a little bit high this month. We have a total of 71 recruitments, and not sure what to attribute that to, but it is sort of that time of the year after the fiscal year began in July, and whatever positions that have been reallocated or changes. We're doing a lot of those recruitments at this time, but we have had some resignations, retirements and such, and just the general turnover. So again, 71 is pretty high. Most of the reports we bring to you are around 50 or below 50s. So anyway, this is a note and file item. If you have questions on any of the items listed here, I'd be happy to try and answer those for you.
Questions? Seeing none, it's noted and filed. Next item.
Eligible list established.
Mr. Doyle.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, this is, again, a routine report for the Commission indicating all the eligible lists that have been established since our last meeting. It's quite a number here. Again, these are all recruitments that have been posted and exams conducted, interview processes. Looks like 17 of them. Most of them promotional, but there's a few open recruitments thrown in there. But again, generally reflective of busy times with the recruitment and selection team here at the city. So again, if you have any questions on this report, I'd be happy to try and answer them for you. Again, it's a note and file.
Okay.
Just a quick question. The fire communication operator that we received 261 applications for, is that the same position that we normally have a lot of turnover in?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Manukian, yes, we always have turnover in that, as well as the police communications. In fact, in my career, I can hardly think of a time where we were fully staffed, either in police or fire. Those are very, very difficult positions to fill. They're aside from just the difficult nature of those jobs, we do go through a rather extensive selection process. We do background investigations because they are working in our public safety departments. A lot of times we'll have a very lengthy list, but then we'll do backgrounds, and then that list will be diminished.
That was my next question. That's where
yes.
it comes after this, right? Point.
Yes, and yeah, of those that we hire, there is unfortunately a high failure rate, and I won't say terribly high, but higher than usual as far as people making it through their probationary period. So it's a tough one. Police and fire, they're equally challenging, but the folks that we do have in those positions, and and when they're successful, we so appreciate it because it's a tough job.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, next item, please.
Class specification for approval, customer service library series.
Okay, Mr. Doyle.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, this is a new specification series. We're essentially taking our customer service staff within our library system and sort of redeploying them to more specialized and really higher level duties than what they're performing. And the staff report indicates that these folks will be really taking on additional duties, and I think Ms. Cleary refers to them as kind of reference light duties. Traditionally, libraries have been run by professional librarians, and that's a position that requires a master's degree and lots of training and education. And those positions are harder and harder to fill these days. And we have these folks who are working in a more of a customer service capacity, taking on more and more of those related duties. And that's kind of a reflection of what this series is. And it really, I think, from the standpoint of providing a better level of customer service to our patrons, it's a good thing. It's one of those things where if a patron comes in and wants to ask a more in-depth question about some type of a reference or research matter, the customer service staff no longer has to sit there and say, well, you need to talk to a librarian about that. Hopefully that staff member will be able to provide the service. So from that standpoint, we think it's a good thing. And additionally, just for the growth and opportunity of our existing staff, if they can learn new things, and who knows, if somebody's good enough and has the right aptitude, they may want to go on and become a professional librarian themselves. But for the most part, it's our hope to upgrade these positions and eventually transition our customer service staff to these new titles. If you have questions on this, be happy to try and answer them. Ms. Abramian from my staff worked on this, and we do have Cindy Cleary, who is the Director of Library, Arts and Culture, here tonight.
Questions?
Move to approve.
Sorry, I actually have a question. So it seems like the education requirement is just a high school degree?
Yes, members of the Commission, and that's consistent with our general customer service and clerical positions, which is, again, at this level. We hope to develop, a mechanism to provide these folks with training, and if enough of them want to move up and go and get the formal education, I think that would be a good thing. But at this level right now, again, it's consistent with what a customer service representative does. The specification does require an experience requirement, having worked in the library, but as far as the core educational background, it's high school. And I believe for the senior, we're asking for a desirable on an Associate of Arts degree.
All right, and then I also have a further concern about the knowledge of and the skill descriptions. I mean, it seems like from the memo that they needed to have a little bit more knowledge about computers and operating systems and be able to serve as a reference. But the knowledge and the educational requirement is quite minimal. So how is it that you're going to evaluate what they actually know vis-a-vis being able to provide adequate reference services as well as technical help?
Members of the Commission, Commissioner Yakubian, again, the individuals that would be eligible for this, we are requiring an experience with the library, at least 1 year at the first level, and 2 years for the second level, and that's the kind of sort of on-the-job training that we hope to develop those skills. But if there's a sense that these need to be beefed up a little bit, we can certainly do that or add some some additional language, and I'll maybe let Ms. Cleary address the issue as well.
Good afternoon. As far as the technical skills, it's very basic troubleshooting that we would be expecting them to do. We actually have an IT department within the department which would deal with the more complex problems that our patrons may have. So, it's, like I said, it's very basic. On the answering reference questions, that too is very basic. I mean, if somebody calls and says, "Can you find this book on a shelf?" Traditionally, unfortunately, libraries have been very protective of librarian positions, and that kind of question has always gone to a librarian. But we're trying to take the more general questions that don't require a skill set that a librarian would have to triage the questions, so to speak. The other part of this is that we are going to a single service model, a point of need model, where we're merging the two departments, the reference department and the clerical side of the operation, once we reopen our library in the spring of 17. So they'll be working side by side. So they will be referring, the CSR classification will be referring the more complex questions to either our IT department or to our professional librarians.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, do you have any questions? Okay, I do have a couple of questions. First of all, are these new positions that have been approved by council, or are they reallocations of existing positions?
Mr. Chair, these would be reallocations of existing positions.
So we're not adding any new personnel?
That is correct.
Per se to the
Yes.
library?
Yes.
And will there be an exam for these positions, or will the people in the existing positions that are reallocated be automatically placed in these new positions?
Mr. Chair, we will need to do some form of a process to transition those individuals to this position. This is not unlike the jailer situation we had, although I think in this case we'll probably put a bulletin up, have those folks apply, those who meet the qualifications, and do some form of an interview or something to where they're able to be assessed in their preparation for this position. But it can't be, I think you used the term automatic. There's nothing automatic in this when we're putting new positions, people into different positions.
There will be, anyone would be able to apply or be if they're qualified for these new positions, whether they're in the existing position or not.
That is correct, as long as they meet the qualifications.
Right. And is there a pay raise? I assume there is, but is there a pay raise associated with this reallocation?
Yes. There's a pay grade that comes with the additional duties. Yes.
Okay. I have no further questions. I believe you moved.
Move to approve. I'll second it.
Okay. We have unanimous consent on that one. And we'll move on to the next item, please.
Job bulletins for approval, Police Sergeant.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, this is a job bulletin for your approval for the position of Police Sergeant. As I've said before, not all job bulletins need to come before the Commission before they're posted, but there are a few circumstances where it's required. And in this case, as per the civil service rules, safety promotional recruitments, in other words, for police and fire, those types of examinations, those bulletins do need to come before the Commission. This bulletin, again, for Police Sergeant is fully consistent with the approved class specification for Police Sergeant. It's all pretty straightforward. Obviously, this will be a promotional process. We have a sufficient pool of police officers who would be eligible to compete, and we hope to open this bulletin, I believe, next week for a couple weeks, and then hold the exam later on in October. So if there's questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them for you. Again, this does require Commission action. We also have Mr. Chavez from my office, as well as Deputy Chief Povolitis here.
Who was the second one?
Povolitis.
Oh, yes. Okay, thank you.
Never heard of him.
Never heard of him. So, okay, any questions?
Move to approve.
Hold it.
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion?
Move to approve.
I do have a couple of
Oh, he wants
questions.
a question.
Russ isn't here for us to blame him, so.
Actually, pick on me. So my question is, you mentioned the bulletin is consistent with the class specs, but is the bulletin in terms of the exam process consistent with past exam processes? There's nothing being left out or changed or tweaked in terms of the exam process for this bulletin?
Mr. Chair, I believe so, but I will have Deputy Chief Povolitis comment. We're talking about a multiple choice written and then a two-part oral process, and I believe that is consistent with what we did, at least the last time we administered this.
Carl Povolitis, Deputy Police Chief. There was one item that we removed from the exam, which was an essay process. We didn't find that really adds value, so we'll be doing the process. They'll have a supplemental questionnaire to submit with the application, which has been standard, which will be evaluated by the panels, and we remove the essay where they had to write something in 45 minutes.
Okay.
The rest of it is consistent with what we've done in the past.
And in terms of the panels, you have the two panels. That, again, is consistent. We're not dropping any...
No, that is consistent with what we've done for, I think, about as long as I've been here.
Okay. And the final question, Mr. Doyle, again, and this has been brought up a few times, you usually put in the bulletins that the appropriate union has been notified, and I've asked the question before. You never indicate that they've had any, that it says okay, or they've seen it, or that they have questions on it. So can you go over that again with me? And when you say they've been notified, how do we know that they don't have objections or that they even got the notification?
Well, that's a good question. We do notify the associations on specifications and bulletins to the extent that they are brought before the commission. It's typically done by email, and Sean is nodding here. And they're asked, if you have concerns, please let us know. And we're quite open about this if there are ever concerns, that we would meet with them, see what the problems are. Or a lot of times we finish this report and issue this agenda prior to us hearing back. And again, our response is that if they have concerns, that we would gladly pull this item and discuss it with them. We do not want to enter into an exam process like this with any kind of controversy or anything like that. But this is pretty straightforward. Our association, they're familiar with the exam process, they're comfortable with it, and we just haven't had the concern. And again, to remind you, the reason why it is stated that way in the report is that oftentimes we may not hear back from them by the time this agenda is sent out. If we do hear back from them, we'll indicate so that there have been no objections raised. So,
okay, thank you.
I have a question, just a question. There's the written test that's, I'm assuming, administered first, correct?
That's correct, yes.
And then because all parts have to be passed, if they don't pass the written exam by, I don't know what it takes, 70% to
70%,
pass,
yeah.
they don't make it to the panels anymore.
That's correct.
Okay, and then professional panel, I understand. What's promotability assessment interview?
Promotability assessment.
Is it done by the professional panel?
No.
Okay.
It's a separate panel. One of them meets in one room, the other is in a.
Is that the internal panel?
It's an internal panel of professionals within the police department that have a say and have a series of questions that are asked, and they provide an evaluation rating.
So somebody could pass flying colors, the written or the professional panel, but if the promotability assessment panel decides that's not the right people, this is not the right person, he or she doesn't get the job.
That's correct. Or it could be the other way around. Somebody could do really well in the promotability panel and do very poorly on the open panel.
All right.
Move to approve?
Second.
We have unanimous consent on that. Thank you. Next item, please.
Public hearing, adoption of resolution, report on unclassified status, proposal for deputy city attorney.
Mr. Doyle.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, this is a request to declare one position of deputy city attorney as unclassified. This is not an item we come to you very often. We have declared other positions unclassified over the years. A lot of times it would be positions that are either temporary in nature, or another example would be like our apprenticeship programs, where the people who are assigned to those positions have to go through multiple years of training and development before we determine them to be journey level in that particular profession. In this case, what we have is sort of a unique circumstance where we have an incumbent a deputy city attorney who resigned from the position really due to an issue of family unity. There was a job transfer involving the spouse and this employee who was doing very well, who we would have easily retained had he been able to stay, was unfortunately had the need to resign. We do anticipate rehiring this individual either through a reinstatement process or some other means. But in the meantime, we will be filling that vacant position, and we are requesting that be done on a salaried basis, yet unclassified, making it known up front fully that this would be a salaried but temporary position, and therefore requesting the unclassified status to make it clear that this is not a position that would attain any sort of property interest right or probationary or past probation. So in the interim, we do anticipate hiring another individual, and that individual would be hired as an unclassified deputy city attorney. So.
Mr. Abkarian.
I read the specification. I personally have a little bit of an issue with this. My understanding is that this job will be kept open for 2 years. Correct? This individual is leaving for 2 years, and this temporary position will be kept open for 2 years.
I'm not certain of the entire duration of that, but it could be
approximately 2 years on my report here.
Yes.
And we are guaranteed that this individual will be back in 2 years.
Commissioner, there's no guarantees, but we do anticipate, given the circumstances, that this individual would be coming back. And
I don't know how this is not going against everything Civil Service Commission is about. I mean, the civil service process is about. Somebody is leaving, they resigned. They could get on the reinstatement list at some point, come back, and if there's a job open, we can definitely reconsider that position at that point. But to say, now we're going to unclassify this position for 2 years, wait for this individual to come back, see if we can then at that point reclassify it again so this individual could get back to this position. I don't know if anyone else doesn't see anything wrong with that. I do, and I'm not very comfortable with keeping a position open for 2 years for someone to go out of the country to see if they have something else, especially somebody who's already resigned, knowing that this person could be put on reinstatement list or some kind of a list at some point, and they can come back, and if the position is open, then they'll apply. We hire someone for 2 years on a hourly basis, probably pay them a whole lot more because there is no other benefits that you're giving to them. That person works for 2 years, could be an incredible employee, and then we tell them, I'm sorry, now this individual is back after 2 years, now you have to go back. I'm not comfortable with this process, and I'm not comfortable voting for it. That's why I'm going to be voting no on that basis.
Any other comments or questions? Did you want to?
I mean,
I would like to actually just get some clarification. Is question number one, why are we doing this? Number two, Commissioner Abkarian brings some important points. Have we done this before? Ever?
as far as these particular circumstances, I cannot recall a time that we've done this before. We have declared many positions historically unclassified, for a variety of reasons.
That I understand.
Usually because they're temporary in nature, and we could always hire hourly people in the interim, but hourly employees do not have the benefits. They don't have the same level of things that a salaried employee would have. So therefore we thought it would be a little less desirable if that were the case. But again, I acknowledge this is a unique circumstance, but again, the city attorney's office very, very happy with the incumbent. In fact, extremely happy with the incumbent. The incumbent, and I don't want to get into too much detail, but the decision to resign was not something that was met with as a means of career enhancement or anything like that. It was truly a case of family unity and dealing with the spouse that got reassigned elsewhere and they had to move away. But that situation in and of itself is temporary. So we do have Ms. Maurer from the city attorney's office. She may have a different perspective on this if she wants to say a few words.
One thing I did fail to do, and I was told about it before the meeting, and I forgot, but this is a public hearing, so I'm officially opening the public hearing on this so we can hear from Ms. Maurer. Before we go to that, did you get your question answered? Are you clear, or do you need some more clarification on that?
I'm still unclear. The purpose. All these years that I've been here, I've never heard of something like this. Now, because there's so much that can be disclosed in an open session about the circumstances, I have concerns the same way. I mean, Commissioner Abkarian brings up realistic points, and unless for me, unless I hear something different, so far I have not get a clear understanding why we're doing this. Maybe I'm not getting the problem.
Okay, well, let's hear from Ms. Kubian, and maybe we'll get Ms. Maurer then to come up and further for us. Sure.
So, well, my question is that if it remains classified, will a new person be hired for that position?
If the commission does not approve this,
correct.
I'm not sure what the alternative would be for the city attorney to do.
Maybe that would
choose to leave it
shed
vacant.
some light on this.
They may choose to use contract attorneys. There is the work that needs to be done.
Right, and that's my concern. So my concern is so you're one man down essentially. So how do you now service those clients? Do you have alternatives? What are they?
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, I'm Ann Maurer from the City Attorney's Office. At this point, I mean, this is the plan we came up with in large part, and the only part really is because we value the incumbent so much, and he's been with our office since 2012, and it's honestly not that easy to find good attorneys who fit into the office that you have. We had an attorney prior to this attorney who failed probation, and that was an 8-month process of going through, dealing with that person, trying to make it work. And so once we had this incumbent and it's worked so well, when he came to us and indicated that he had the situation where his wife was going to go out of the country and he needed to go with her, and that it really is a limited time frame, that her plan is to be in this position for 2 years and then come back to the Los Angeles office of the same firm. So that's why we immediately started to think, is there some way we can make this work? And so we came up with this idea of the unclassified position, and really the thought was to find, probably a newer attorney who would be able to gain some valuable experience by learning the ropes, so to speak, and doing basic stuff and really providing support to me and understanding that it would be a limited term. So that's how we came up with the plan. If we weren't allowed to do that, I'm not sure what we would do, honestly. We would probably try to keep it open as long as we could and see if I could make it work, just doing it on my own. And then if we couldn't, then I guess we'd have to cross that bridge of doing a full recruitment for his position.
So are you prohibited from hiring someone on an hourly basis at that point? I guess that's my question.
No, and actually at this point we have someone who interned for us last summer. He just graduated from law school and took the bar, and he's working just on in an hourly capacity. But we felt for the long term, it would be better to have someone that we could offer the benefits to and make it more enticing for someone to do that job on that, like for a longer term basis than just hourly. And it's more economical that way too, because we don't have to pay the higher hourly rate that we otherwise would probably have to pay if we weren't able to offer the benefits.
So it would be a salary position?
Yes, salary, but
without benefits?
With benefits,
with
but just
benefits.
Unclassified. So they just wouldn't get the protection. And they would understand that it's sort of just an opportunity to earn some valuable experience, have something for your resume, but that it would be limited once the incumbent returned.
I mean, Commissioner Arpakarian brings up a very legitimate point. I mean, what if you fall in love with this new person and he actually fits in better than the incumbent? What do you do then? You come back to us and say, okay, well, let's now classify the position? Or, and the alternative, what if, the spouse, moves on to another position and not return to Los Angeles or does something completely different? I mean, it seems like it's not just 6 months. A lot can happen in 2 years.
Yeah, I totally understand that, and there is that possibility, but we felt really we're not losing anything by doing it this way and giving him the chance to come back, and it's not costing us anymore. We fit it all into our budget. So we figured, what's the downside of giving him the opportunity to come back, because we would like him to come back.
But if he does come back, you could still hire him, correct?
No, well, not if we have a classified, if we just have an hourly person, yes. If we had a classified person, then no, because they would have civil service protection and we couldn't just fire them. So,
but if there is another opening,
yes, but we've had shortfalls and we haven't had any openings.
But you see our concerns, right? I mean, because this is such a rare situation that it's like the solution that has been come up is like a Hail Mary. I mean,
I think it's a great solution, actually. I mean, it gives someone an opportunity to come into an office they wouldn't otherwise have a chance to work in, get some great experience, understanding that it's limited term, and it gives us the opportunity to hold a spot open for someone who we find to be a very valuable employee.
Well, why would they not otherwise have a chance to come in? I mean, we're assuming that if this doesn't work out, and if the hourly position and your ability to cover some of this person's workload does not work out too well, and you do actually need to replace them because now you are one person down, staffing-wise, then you're going to have to hire someone else. So someone is going to be provided that opportunity. So doing this actually forecloses that phantom person from having that opportunity.
Well, I guess our ultimate goal is to give this incumbent the chance to come back. So I think that's the ultimate goal, and in the process, we can give someone an opportunity to have 2 years of experience. So that the person who wants the experience can get it for the 2 years, and we can still have the possibility of letting the incumbent return. And if the incumbent doesn't return, and if the person that we hire is great, then, yes, we'll come back to you and say things changed. But I don't think no harm will have come to anyone. We won't have cost the city any more money, and things should function as they normally function. So I guess I don't really see a downside to giving it a try.
Are we guaranteed?
Can I make sure?
Okay.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I just wonder, just to follow, but we're not guaranteeing to this individual in 2 years that there's this, by approving this, are we going to be guaranteeing that that individual in 2 years has a job here?
The new person?
No, not the new person.
The
person that's going away.
Yes,
That's the understanding, that if he wants to come back in 2 years, we will have him back.
Okay.
That's the understanding, and that's the
I'm sorry. We're going to say that we're going to keep a job open, leave it open for 2 years for this individual only, in a hope that this individual comes back. If they don't come back, well, then we'll hire somebody else. But if they do come back, That other individual will be kicked out. Now we'll bring in the individual, guaranteed a job for them in 2 years. I mean, it is the whole process. If it acts like a duck, it quacks like a duck, it's a duck. As far as I'm concerned, now for the city attorney's office not to see a problem with this, I am just amazed that there would not be more of a reservation with this process of let's keep this open in a civil service process. Now, if you guys want to put the civil service commission, civil service process aside, you're more than welcome to do that on a vote of the members of the city, citizens in the city. But as long as there's a civil service process and civil service rights, I don't see how this is okay with the city attorney's office. I just don't see it.
Well, I think we would have the prerogative under the civil service rules to not hire someone, so we could keep the position open, and I can work extra and do as much as, do everything, which, I may be able to do. But we could do that and leave it open, and I don't think that would be a problem if we choose to have a vacancy in the hope that this person returns. So
in 2 years.
That would be our prerogative, and I don't think there'd be any problem with that if that's what we chose to do and save the city money, and, I'll get all the work done. So all we're doing is, instead of just leaving it open, we're bringing someone else in to gain some experience.
And guaranteeing the other. I think the problem here, I think that we're all digesting this, is the part of leaving something open for a specific person. That's, I think, at least, correct me if I'm wrong, that's my problem with it too. I mean, honestly, we can leave a position open, but that's one thing. But to guarantee someone that 2 years down the line, if they decide to come back, this is yours to have. That's the problem. Sorry.
Chair DeVine, I did want to address the issue of whether or not this is something that's permissible under the rules, and it is permissible under the rules. It does require a 4/5 vote of the commission. You could find that in the Charter Article 24, Section 7, and it talks about the unclassified service shall consist of the following offices and employments, and in there it says, provided that the commission may, upon application of the appointing agency and after public notice and hearing by the affirmative vote of 4/5 of its members, exempt any position in any unskilled. Actually, it talks about unskilled labor
positions.
Sorry about that.
That's the reason that they didn't mention that in the memo itself.
Okay, I'd like to weigh in now, if I may. One of the advantages of being the chair is you get to hear all the great ideas from your colleagues, and then you can say, me too.
Last word, right?
Well, the last words are me too. But quite frankly, when I read this last Friday when we got the package, I had the exact same reaction that Commissioner Ebkarian just vocalized here. My thought was, this is a classic example of circumventing the civil service system. And I was totally amazed that this was even being brought to us. According to Ms. Varpetian, we may have the ability to do that, but this is certainly not a case where I would be voting to approve something like this. The other comment made that, and I think it's a great idea, if you can find that you want to, as an alternative to hold a position open for 2 years and you do the work, I say that's fine. And if that works, then I would suggest that the council do away with that position. We don't need it if you can, and someone else can do the work. Pardon me?
Pardon? You're 100% right.
So anyway, I don't want to belabor this. I have the exact same feelings voiced by all three of my colleagues, and I would not be supporting this either. So with that, you have any further comments you'd like to make?
No, just that I guess I don't understand how it's circumventing the civil service process, because I think what we're doing is we're going to bring in another person. I mean, like you said, anything can change. So I guess we could have said, we're leaving it open. We're not guaranteeing. If it would make you more comfortable to say we're not guaranteeing that he can have his job back, this is what we're going to do for a 2-year period. I mean, maybe we can phrase it differently. Maybe there's something in the way we could phrase it that could satisfy the commission. I'd be happy to work with you all on that, because I think we would like to at least, have options, and so maybe it's not a guarantee.
I think we should just vote on this.
if it's something that, I mean, so speaking for myself, that is something totally different than what is in front of us. If you are able to come up with an idea that we're not guaranteeing an individual several years down the line a specific spot, at least I'm willing to listen to it. I mean, but the way this is, it's really hard for me, and so is everybody else.
Okay. At this point, unless you have a final comment, we're going to close the public hearing.
Okay, thank you.
Public hearing is closed. Do we have a motion?
Motion, well,
To deny.
to deny it.
For a second.
Second.
Do we have unanimous consent?
Yes,
Let's take roll on this one, please.
Commissioner Yakubian,
I agree with the motion.
Commissioner Manukian,
I seconded the motion.
Commissioner Abkarian,
Yes.
Chair Devine.
Yes. Thank you. Next item, please.
Reports.
Mr. Chair, all we have is the report of the past two job performance evaluations. And you can see, again, previous efforts to prove this have worked. We have no second notices. We have no third notices. There are a handful of first notices. Most of the departments have no past due evaluations for this report. This is a note and file. If you have questions, comments, I'd be happy to try and answer them for you.
Do we have any questions? Seeing none, we'll note and file that. And next item.
Civil Service Commission staff comments.
Do we have comments from commissioners? Staff? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next item.
Closed session.
Okay, will you read that into the...
Closed session, public employee appointment.
Okay, at this point, we will...
We will adjourn to closed session. We would ask everyone in the audience to leave. We will be reporting out, but not on camera. So at this time, we would also ask GTV6 to turn off the